Welcome to the BTM Club show. As you know, it's always about celebrating the great people in our community, whether it be music, film, writers. I love to bring them all to the BTM Club audience. Today, we have dancing man himself. I have to say, now this is his title, the British Ambassador of Soul.
Correct.
Also known as David Nathan, because it seems that the British Ambassador of Soul title has surpassed his actual birth name.
Well,
You don't sound sure. Do
yeah.
people even still call you David Nathan, or do they
Oh
just
yeah, absolutely.
or just call
Well,
you, oh,
yeah.
here comes the ambassador?
Well, no. I think when people say here comes the ambassador, they already know that that's an honorary title. But for the most part, people call me David.
Well, it's an honorary title that's bestowed upon you,
Yes.
and what everybody seems to call you and knowing you as.
Well, yeah, within a certain circle,
Circle.
you can say within, well, I'd say within certain music circles, some of my music industry friends. Yeah, I take it as a big compliment and as a just a very it speaks more to, I think, my tenure more than anything else.
Right.
Like I've been
Well,
around for a long time.
we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes, I know we will.
Now, I have to say, first of
Yes,
all, I've been running an event for about 16 years. Now, people know the BTM Club Reunited. It's been running for
yes,
15
yes.
years, 16 years. Never in my 16 years have I ever seen a Soul Train line in Reunited. Okay, we have to start with this and then move on.
Okay.
So we're in the event, the last event we had for Bank
That's
Holiday,
right. That's right.
Carnival weekend. And I thought there's quite a furore going on the dance floor. Well, there's always a furore going on the
Well, I'm
reunited
sure.
dance floor, but there was a particular furore this night. And I thought, why is everybody, it looks like there's a tunnel. Why is everybody standing on either side of the club looking into the dance floor? Then I walk over to see what's happening. I thought maybe somebody had collapsed or there
Oh
was an
no.
accident. I walk over to see what's going on, and I see the ambassador, the British ambassador of soul, with his arms in the air, like he was at church,
Well,
conducting the congregation,
well,
leading the
yeah.
congregation. I mean, it was phenomenal. I've never seen that. So I have
Ever?
to thank
Never.
you for coming and bringing that to
Yeah.
Reunited, because it's
Well,
never been there in
well,
16
thank
years.
you,
So,
Barry. Thank you. Well, can I just say by firstly, thank you for that. I didn't. All I can tell you is it really was in the moment. It was absolutely the moment. It wasn't planned or, and what it really, I think the thing I'd want to say about it most importantly is that the music um it's part of who I am. I don't write about music. I don't involve myself with music as a kind of intellectual pursuit. It's really it's really within me. I don't have to say it any other way now. It's true to say that having lived for 34 years in America, where much of this music really began, is where I got kind of so schooled it in, so engaged in it, that it's almost like second nature in a way. Now, it just so happened on that wonderful evening, um, uh, whoever the DJ was put on at that time, put on a particular, for want of a better word, jam, because it is that, by Shaka Khan, When I Know You, I Live You. And I got to tell you, well, not every time I've heard it, but almost any time I've heard it, it's just my play. I just go into it. And it's because a brilliant piece of recording, the horns, the Brazilians, everything. And just to be honest with you, when I lived in LA for a period of time, it was my morning workout song. I would put it on in my flat and I would dance around. No one's there, just me dancing around not a crazy person, but it was very energetic. And I haven't heard that particular song for about maybe 5 years or so, and you know, in a public setting. So I didn't plan it, but when the spirit takes over, Barry,
That's real. I
you
was
should
just
not
about to
stop the
say
spirit. Don't
it was
stop the
really
spirit,
a
man.
case. It was really a case of when the music takes you.
That's right. That's so
When the
right.
music takes you, you forget where you are.
I
You
did.
forget who
I
you
would
are. Yeah, you
at one
just
point,
you're
you
in the
know,
music.
then one of the
But it was
people,
wonderful to
well,
see.
thank you, Barry. And I really appreciated the invitation to be at the event. I loved it. And yes, I felt like something happened that night. But I would tell you one other thing. When one of your other guests was there, someone I don't really know, she was here recently, Lynn, she said that was like a spiritual experience. And I said, well, it
Yeah,
kind of,
it really
for
was.
me, that is so much about what the soul music that I've listened to, I've loved, I've written about, the people I've met. It's really about that. And so, yeah, I didn't really have much control. I really wasn't really watching what was happening. And then
No,
I thought, oh my
exactly.
God. Yeah, I was like, oh, whoa, okay. But I couldn't stop it. I could not have stopped it.
And clearly, as you saw by the response, nobody wanted you to stop it.
Now, don't ask me to repeat it because that won't be so easy.
Well, I don't ask. I never ask. I never ask. You know,
Okay, all
what
right.
happens,
But thank you for
happens.
that. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yes,
yes.
thank you. Thank you.
So let's hear about the. I don't know if I should call him David Nathan or if I should call
Just
him.
call me David, man. Just call
Okay,
me
David.
David. It's
You
fine.
know, when you're in the company of royalty, you're not really quite sure to what to call them or where to put your hands, or you know, you're not sure what to do. So please guide me as to how I'm supposed to relate to
Well,
royalty here. Okay.
I'm not royalty, but I am in a court of royalty. A British ambassador serves at a court, you know. But I will
Okay.
say, can I just share with you a very, very, it's probably 1 minute quick story. It's very, very funny. I was at an event in February of 2023 in Los Angeles. It was my birth month as well. So I was there partly to celebrate my birthday. I was invited to this event that was in honor of Whitney Houston, something that the estate of Whitney Houston put on. And the main publicist for that event, somebody I've known a long time, Gwendolyn Quinn, there's a whole table of people that were a part of the estate. She said, I want to introduce you to them all, David. I said, oh, come over. So she starts out by saying, you know, this is David Nathan, and he met Whitney years ago, and he's written about so many different. So I put my, I said, Gwendolyn, why don't you just tell him I'm British Ambassador of Soul, whispered in her ear. So well, actually, he's the British Ambassador of Soul. And there was one bright spark at the table. And he sat there and he said, excuse me, am I supposed to bow or get on my knees? That was a bit cheeky. And I said, no, it's fine. You're fine. It's all right. I don't expect you to bow, but you can call me Your Excellency if you wish, which is the correct term when you speak to an ambassador. Actually, you're supposed to call them Your Excellency. But I'm fine if no one does. There you go.
Okay.
So that's got that out there.
I quite like that, Your Excellency.
Well, I do too, because I am excellent. And you are too.
Well, I was just about to say there are
I
quite a
say
few
you're
of us then
excellent.
that deserve that title, but that's another
Well,
story
no,
for
no,
another show.
excellence knows excellence when it sees it or meets it. How's that?
Perfect.
Thank you.
So let me hear the David Nathan story because I like to hear the story of the people behind who we now know them as. Because for me, that is the inspiration for anybody to say, well, you know what? They didn't start off as this. They began as a regular person and then became Your Excellency. So, David, where did you grow up?
I was born in London, and I grew up, well, initially I was born in the area called Stoke Newington. Actually, I wasn't born there, but that's where my parents lived. And actually, I was born in Manor House. So that's where I lived the first probably 6 years of my life. My dad was a fish fryer. He was actually quite a well-known fish fryer in London. And he had a nickname. It seems like all my family has nicknames. He was called Jackie Fish, even though his name was Mark. But anyway,
Jackie Fish, even though his
Jackie
name was
Fish.
Mark.
Yeah,
Okay.
really. And then we moved to Kilburn, Northwest London. And again, we lived at that point we lived above my dad's shop that he managed, which is called Crusoe's on Kilburn High Road. And I was there from the age of 6 to probably about, I would say about 16, something like that. Yeah, 16. And that was really my formative years in terms of my developing interest in music and other areas of life. I had apparently, well, I know I had a natural aptitude for writing, and I enjoyed writing very much. And my teachers encouraged me very much to do that. And then, so that's where I grew up. And that's where I spent most of, I say, my formative years. And that's really where music as such became such an incredibly important part of my life.
Right. So the writing, because your interest in words and language and writing and
Mhm.
grammar
Yeah,
are obviously the foundation of what have led to what you did in later life. So
true.
that started quite young. Your interest in words and language and
Yeah.
writing started quite young.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a couple of things about that. Yes, it's true. It did, and I say I have to thank my teachers in primary school for encouraging me. You know, we of course, like at that time would have exams and stuff like that. And I remember one particular assignment was for us to write a story, make up a story. And I remember I actually kind of vague memory of what I wrote about, and it was very detailed. And it was about this group of people on an island, and they had to leave the island because a whole other group of people. It was very, and monsters came. I was 8, 9 years old, so it's kind of like
Okay,
a
right.
child story, you know. But the teacher I had, Mr. Edwards, he said, "This is really good, you know, David. You know, you should do more writing." And I just enjoyed it. And then I think the next writing piece that's probably relevant in some ways to the rest of my life is I wrote a love story at the age of 9,
Okay.
and I was very proud of it. I don't. I guess I must have been watching. I don't know, watching black and white television. That's all we had. So at that time. So yeah, I wrote a love story. My mom was very pleased about it. Oh, look at this! But I illustrated it.
I see the embarrassment now.
Well, the illustration it had the love story had a female heroine, you could say, and I even made up the name. I even remember it. I called her Zena Blackwell. I don't know where that comes from. I made it up. I really don't. I don't know. I can't tell you. But anyway, I drew a little picture of Xena wearing an evening gown showing some cleavage. And my mother, she probably didn't like, well, she saw it, but then she went to the family gathering and said, "Oh, look, David's written a great love story." And, and I had a jokey uncle. Everyone has a jokey uncle, or
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
who's always
Or
like to,
sometimes more than one.
yes, who like to take the you know what out of people. And she showed it to my uncle and all the family. And my uncle said, "Well, you better watch him. He's going to turn into a lad." You know, like a lad mean in Britain, when you mean
Yeah,
like
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of a playboy kind of guy. And
yeah.
my mom was so up. She was really hurt because she was so proud of the part of the love story. Anyway, so clearly I had a penchant for
A
making stuff
penchant
up. Yes,
for
penchant
it.
for making
But
stuff,
yeah, you know, the
and for
funny thing is,
writing. Yeah.
I love language, always have.
Yes. Yes.
And you know, as I always say, the dictionary is full of words. Use them. That's
That's
what they're
right.
there
That's
for.
right.
You know,
That's right.
don't only use 3 or 4 words. The dictionary, the thesaurus is full of words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Use them,
Fully with you on that one.
you
So
know?
that was really especially my interest in music, in writing, I should say. And yeah, I had a very strange, you could say that I was a little strange as a child because obviously writing love stories and making up stories in school for the teacher. And then I went on to do a Siamese temple dance.
Okay.
But
Now
we've
we are
shared that for
getting
another time.
strange.
It's a long story.
Now we are getting strange.
Yes. So let's leave the strangeness for now, but really to say that when I say strange, I mean, I really think now that although my parents didn't have any money and they were hardworking, they were hard working people. They were working class people, they didn't have any like lots of money or anything. But the one thing I'm very grateful to for my parents is they gave me for want of a better word, the space to be myself. And how that really expressed itself was when I asked to get a typewriter. And I'm not talking about a typewriter, I'm talking about a really old-fashioned, and my dad found this secondhand, clunky, yeah, old school typewriter. Can you, I mean, really, it wasn't electric, but that, I tell you what, when my dad,
Listen, the number of amazing things that have
yes,
been
man.
written on the
Yes,
old clunky typewriter.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
Before that, they were written by hand, so it didn't matter
That's
that
right.
it was written on a clunky typewriter.
No,
You
but the
know,
point, yeah, the point I'm making is that they gave me that opportunity. I mean, I look back at it, I think, because no one else, none of my other people in school or anyone had typewriters at home. Well, not in the school I went to anyway. And none, none of my family, none of my other family cousins had typewriters. So it was really a gift. And I had no idea in that moment, I guess my parents didn't either, that in doing that, they really gave me a massive gift. I mean, when I think about it, I was like, wow, just that one thing a parent can do for a child that could really change their destiny. And that's what
well,
happened.
that's it. I mean, you realize that so much is balanced on the childhood that you're given.
Mhm.
When you have that support network that allows you to be free,
Mm-hmm.
to express yourself however you want to, you then see in later life the difference in
Yeah,
people, those who had it or
absolutely.
those who don't or
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah. And it
you
was just
know?
that one thing, just that
Yeah,
one thing. So I remember, I don't know where he got it from, but it went some secondhand shop.
doesn't
But
matter.
I
The
know, and
fact is, you wanted a
that's right.
typewriter
Yeah,
and you were given a typewriter. What
that's
you're going
right.
to do with it is up to you, but you wanted
Well,
it.
I wrote. How about
Yeah,
it? But here's the
exactly.
thing. Here's the other
Exactly.
thing to tell you. The big exciting thing happened when they started to bring electric typewriters, which was Olivetti. It was a company called Olivetti, and it was it was electric. You plugged it in. It wasn't like the old manual thing. Whoa! I mean, that was like, oh, whoa! I
Well,
mean,
even the word Olivetti,
yes.
you've got to be of a certain generation to even know
Hello,
what that
hello.
is.
I know. Well, I am of that generation. Oh, yeah.
You've got to be of a certain generation to know
Yes.
what Olivetti is.
So yeah.
So, okay, so we know what you went into, but what were your first jobs that led up to this that you then decided, this is what I want to do, or I'm not doing that anymore. I want to go in this direction?
Um, well, let me think now. I mean, well, by the time I got my first Saturday job, which by then I was in grammar school, to um to earn pocket money, by that time, which had been 1964, I'd already begun my journey in music, so to speak. And it began prior to that with but me listening to the other uh, pop artists of the day, the Beatles. I love the Beatles. I mean, because I was a kid,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
like I was a young teenager. If you want to be in, you got to I haven't got to, but and I did really like the music, and I won the Hard Day's Night LP at the school raffle. So, but I was really, and I watched, the television, Ready Steady Go, and the shows on TV. So that's really what was like a background for me to start really being so interested in music, and I did. And in some ways, it was an escape. It was escape from whatever was going on around me at the time, as a teenager growing up in London and just the different things that happen to young people, and just dealing with, emotions that you didn't have before, you start to experience, and just the environment around me. And I found music a great escape from uh, some of the harsh realities of life at that time, even. So my first job was earning pocket money at a record shop. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Well, there were a few on Saturday morning. Which were the first? Well, okay, I think the first one was probably at a shop called Music Land, which was on West End Lane. Not West End Lane, Worsden Lane. So Worsden Lane around the corner from where we lived. And it was, as it turns out, it was actually quite a historic shop. Musicland was owned by a gentleman from Jamaica called Lee Gotfall. And Lee Gotfall was a man of Indian descent who came from Jamaica, and he was an entrepreneur. And as I've subsequently found out, he was a very, very important person as he became in the world of reggae. I didn't know that at the time because he was just owner of a shop. But he was very smart, because what he would do is he'd have records imported every week or every other week from Jamaica. And that was one of the only shops in London where people from the Caribbean who had come here, in the 50s and early 60s could connect with home, so they could buy the records at this one shop in Musicland. And because I was interested in music, and I've begun to get my journey into R&B and soul music. That was a natural place for me to get my Saturday job. So early on, I had to learn certain dialects and certain artist names like Prince Buster and Lord Kitchener from the back in the way back. This wasn't reggae. This is ska and blue beat. And Saturday morning, I with a crash course, latest from Jamaica. Okay, yeah. Then they asked me if I like any America, anything from America, and then I would start to play them my own favorite things. And the one big hit from that time I remember was Otis Redding's version of My Girl, which was not a big hit in America for him, and just a certain memories of that. So that was my first job. Right. I spent all my money on the records. My mom was furious. You pocket money, where's the pocket money?
Yeah, but the thing is, I think all of us that have got that interest in music today,
yes,
kind of have the same beginnings where the music interest is concerned, or your interest in music was sparked. I remember having a discussion with you about the first single I'd ever bought was Family Affair.
Yes.
By Sly and Family Stone.
Can you tell me a little bit how I know this is you talking to me, but I'm also talking, it's a two-way conversation. So how did you first become involved, become interested in music? What was the thing about music? Because people who are not interested in music, believe it or not, there are.
I can't imagine it. Well, firstly, my father initially came here as an opera singer, a baritone opera singer. Yes. My mother played the piano.
Right.
So number one, music was always in our house. I had an older brother, or have an older brother, who's 10 years my senior. So he was always buying music. Mm-hmm. It's always been in our house, in our family. So for me, it's just a completely natural path.
Yeah.
Completely natural path.
Do you play any instruments?
I played the piano. I played from the age of 5 up until 18. So
wow. Now, can I ask you, when you play piano, was it like a natural thing, or you had to? I mean, we taught?
No, I had lessons, and I'm classically trained, so I can't do all that jazz stuff. I'm classically trained, so it's very firm wrists and correct fingering, etc., etc.
I got
so. Yeah, I'm classically trained, so it's all Tchaikovsky, Penderecki, Strauss, Beethoven.
No Bacharach in there?
None.
I'm joking.
None at all, unfortunately. But yes. But back to me interviewing you.
Sorry. I'm sorry. My natural journalist mode.
I know, enough about me. I'm not the interesting one here. You are. Okay. So I remember seeing a picture of you with the biggest afro ever.
Yes.
Where did this afro come from? Was that a perm or was it natural? I have to ask.
You did ask me that question. It is definitely natural. It is definitely not a perm. And to be honest with you, the only two members of my family whose hair was like that, or we let grow like that, was myself and my sister. My mother had somewhat curly hair, but wasn't like mine.
So where did it come from then? Where did the curly hair come from?
Well, firstly, I just let it grow, and when it grew, grew like that. But the other thing was where it came from. Well, as I did some genealogical checking, and it turns out that my four great grandfathers back on my father's side of the family came from Portugal.
Okay.
And they were, yeah. And so I don't know that that's definitely absolutely where it came from, but it didn't come from the mother side of the family because they had some for curly hair, but not like mine. But it was
Because I
actually
saw
it's
that picture
real.
and you were proper 70s Afro.
Well,
It was a proper
yes,
70s
yes,
Afro.
yes,
So
yeah, and
that's why I
that,
had to
yes, yes,
ask,
yes.
was it a perm? Because
No, 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 no.
perming back in those days was quite
No, no,
common.
no, oh, no, no. In fact, I started having my hair. I tell you who was the inspiration for me growing it that way. I wasn't always it was all growing like when I was at school, it wasn't like that. So it was really Nina Simone.
Okay.
Nina Simone, for whom I started the first UK Appreciation Society fan club, was at the time probably a leader in terms of her Afrocentricity and dressing and how she kept her hair very natural. And while I wasn't having, obviously I didn't have the same color hair she did, but she was very inspiring for me, very, very inspiring to, and because I got to know her a little bit and see who
Well,
she
she
was.
was definitely a leader and
Absolutely,
extremely Afrocentric, as you say.
absolutely, absolutely, and very proud and
Proud of
very
it,
proud of that.
yes.
Unbelievable. I mean, you can't have co-written a song or be one of your biggest anthems called "Young, Gifted, and Black" if that's not how you felt
Yeah,
about herself and her
absolutely.
life. So yeah, so it was a very so she was quite a big inspiration. And I don't I mean there are photographs of me in London from about 1970, 71, about that, where I was my hair began to grow and I just didn't cut it. I just let it grow into its full
Proper Afro, say the word.
Well, well, yeah. I mean, I can't really call it Afro because I'm not of
Full
African descent.
Afrocentric
But all
Afro,
right,
you
an
could say.
Afrocentric haircut. And you weren't the first person who asked me if it was a perm. You were not. And the thing was funny. The photograph you saw of me probably is the one that was taken in New York when I moved to New York and was writing for Blues and Soul. And at that point, that's how I dressed all the time. I dressed the way I dressed, very dashiki like.
Yeah,
I had to think about my
I see
day.
you love your Afro shirts.
Yes, yes, and my hair. That was my hair. When I go to
Yeah.
interviews, everything was all the same thing. And I remember a funny thing. I've got a photograph somewhere of me with a group called the Silvers, who were a young group in the 70s, late mid 70s, and they all had the Silvers had afros, for real afros, right? And there's a photograph of me with them sitting around a conference room table when we were doing the interview. And I think my hair was bigger than theirs. It
I don't
was.
doubt that for a minute because I can see you don't do things by halves. So I
Usually
don't doubt
not.
that for a minute.
Usually not. Yes. But
Now
so
it's
yeah.
interesting you
Yes.
mentioned the Silvers because they
Really.
were a family that were like the Jacksons,
Yes. Yes.
extremely talented, but apparently didn't have the support that the Jacksons had.
Right. Right. True. True. I mean, they were, as you said, a family group, and they were group. The record company was signed to was Capitol Records, which was at that time really beginning its really making an impression in the world of soul and black music at the time. So you had Natalie Cole, Tavares, Peabo Bryson, then Mays and Silvers were part of the next little group of artists that were signed there. So they were, but I just think it was difficult. The Jacksons were so, you could say, omnipresent, that to have another family group come through it was not as easy. Although I have to say that some of the members of the Silvers, particularly Leon Silvers, he's became a very well-known producer, songwriter. He has written and produced many of the hits for artists like Shalimar, Whispers, so forth. So he
Yeah.
in his early 80s period of time when he wasn't with the group anymore, so he's the one member of the group that I
Because
think,
Foster went
yeah,
off as a solo artist,
that's
didn't
correct. That's
he? Yeah.
correct. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so anyway, you know,
But we need to go back to
that's
before
why we go
that.
all over tangents. Yes, we will.
Yeah, we
Come
need to
on
go back
back.
to before
Come
that.
on back.
How did you get into the soul music? What was the start of
Yes,
that
yeah,
for you,
yeah.
apart from the record shop that you were working?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was almost kind of the other way around. Like the music led me to work at the record shop because, as I mentioned, as the Beatles and all the other things that were contemporary to young people in Britain at the time. And one of the things that happened was the Beatles, in particular, would on the back of one particular LP, they listed the names of the original artists whose music they were admiring and then doing cover versions of. So there were names like the Marvelettes, talking about Please Mr. Postman, and the Miracles, You Really Got a Hold on Me, and all these songs they had covered. And of course, I was intrigued to read about these names. I had never heard the songs. Oh, that's interesting. And then, to be honest with you, there was we all have a moment when a record happens or something happens that you go, then it kind of changes your life forever. You don't necessarily know that. So here's what it was. Very simple story. I was besotted with Cilla Black, who was not a singer, soul singer, as you probably can tell. But Cilla Black, who for those who may, I don't know if all your listeners will know who Cilla Black
We
is.
all know who Cilla Black
Thank
is.
you. Very good. Very good.
We
But
all
Cilla
know.
Black recorded a song called Anyone Who Had a Heart. And the story behind that, it would go off in another tangent. So let's say she her version of it, and the other version was the original version was competing with it. And the other version was caused by Dion in
Warwick,
England,
yeah.
Warwick, in America, Warwick. And I had an argument with my one of my classmates who thought that you should like the original version by Dionne Warwick, and I'm like, no, I don't like it because I don't like the trumpet. He says, "Were you just saying that because you're in love with Cilla Black?" The things we say as children, my dear. What can I say? So the bottom line was, I was all right. Well, I still love Cilla Black until the release of the follow-up song from Dion, which was Walk On By. And when I heard Walk On By, within a few weeks or months, all my Cilla Black photographs came down and all my Dionne Warwick photographs went up. And the music, and I still have that same 45. I actually have it here somewhere. The actual 45
Really?
I bought in 1964. And that really was it. That opened up a world of music for me because I never really heard anything like that. Honestly, I mean, I'd heard the Beatles and all that, but not really. Dion, those songs, they were so beautifully written and crafted, and she sounded so soulful to me, and just Walk On By, You'll Never Get to Heaven. These were all the hits she had at the time, and I just got completely smitten by the music, by her, what she did. Just it spoke to me as an adolescent who was going through what people go through as adolescents, falling in love, puppy love, unrequited love, wanting to go out and being rejected, all the things that happen to teenagers and everywhere. And at that time, that's what it really it kind of took me over. I still have the first LP of hers I bought. I begged my mum for the pocket money. She said, "Well, wait till you get your next pocket money." I said, "But it just came out, Please, please, please." I still have the LP now. It cost 27 and 6.
27 and 6.
Yeah. And so that LP and that music was my kind of launch pad for loving the music, loving what would become soul music. And then and that was really the beginning. And then after that, well, if you have a moment, I could tell you the very quick story of how Dion, the music of Dion, and really loving her music, introduced me by name to Nina Simone, because in an interview that Dion did at the time, she made a reference to one of her favorite then American artists, called Nina Simone. But in Britain at that time, nobody knew who Nina Simone was. She
Yeah.
was out in England. She had one LP out at that time in England. She was completely under the radar. And I thought, well, I wonder who this Nina Simone is. Okay, well, all right then. I know who she is. I mean, I knew she was American, but she had a French name, so I was a bit confused. But anyway, so Nina had a record come out called Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. And that came out towards the end of 1964. And it was the song was written for, in a sense, for her. And of course, it was covered by a group called The Animals with Eric Burdon, who made it a #1 hit in America and I think in Britain. And Nina didn't have any look in. So that's when I was like, oh, no, this isn't good enough. So I started writing letters to the little music papers. Yeah, people should listen to the original version. I was one of those kind of people. Why hasn't the original version of Don't Let Me Be been heard by the other people? Why don't they play it on the radio? You're a little teenager being all
Petulant.
petulant and militant. Oh
Yeah.
no! I've gone from loving Cilla Black cover version to supporting the Nina
Dion.
and
Yeah.
Dion and Nina. Really,
Then all of a sudden, the penny
then
dropped
all of a
the
sudden,
worth of the originals.
yes,
Yes, the worth of the
and
originals.
yeah, and so then I really I had kind of a moment. I was working at a different record shop on Saturdays at that point in '65. I was working at a record shop on Edgware Road near Marble Arch, Saturday job, and I asked the manager if we had any records by Nina Simone. He said, we have one. It's in the jazz section. And back then you could take the record and listen to it in the record booth to see if you liked it.
Yeah.
If you liked it, you could buy it, or yeah. If you didn't like it, you didn't buy it. And I took the LP, it's called Nina Simone at Town Hall, and I put it on, and the first bars of that whole LP are her playing piano and singing "Black is the color of my true love's hair," but which, by the way, is a Norwegian folk song.
Mm.
So that's the original of it. And as I heard her voice, I started crying. I just started crying. I don't know what it was in that moment that I heard in her voice, but it touched something so deep within me. I couldn't even, I mean, I just was like, fortunately, I wasn't looking out into the shop when I just started crying. And then I said, well, whoever this Nina Simone is, I got to find out more. And then all the other people around, little groups of people having fan clubs of people. So I started myself a fan club of Nina Simone. So it
All
wasn't,
right.
I mean, I just wrote a letter to the record company and said, can I start a fan club for Nina Simone in England?
Well, you've got that to your name. And
Yeah.
of course, it consequently built an association between you and her.
Yeah. And they sent a record. Of course, they were thrilled. There's Philips Records in England. They were thrilled that anyone even knew she was. And as it turned out, there was already a plan for her to come to Europe within like a few months of me writing that letter. I didn't know that. And so here she comes to America. She comes to, I write the letter. The letter gets sent to her manager, husband, Andy. He says, we'd be delighted to have David start a fan club for her. So he sends me all the material. Or we call it Appreciation Society. I didn't want to call it a fan club because she was much too regal for me to call it a fan club. It didn't sound right to me. Nina Simone fan club just didn't ring like the Nina Simone Appreciation
Appreciation
Society.
Society.
Yes. And I found out more about her. She was classically trained pianist and just more about her background. And he said, well, she's going to be, Miss Simone is going to be performing in June. And I went to the airport to meet her. And unfortunately, it was a Saturday because I was still in school. So I went Saturday morning to the airport to meet her and her husband and her 4-year-old daughter. And I can't even tell you what it was like. It's like a scene out of a movie, Barry. I mean, I was, I walked over and said, hello. Hello, I'm David. I've started your Appreciation Society here. And Andy said, oh, it's lovely to meet you. And Nina, and but it was just magic. It was magic. And then So here's where Aretha comes into the picture. So you've got your Dion, Nina, and as I'm sitting with Nina Simone at the airport on that very first day in June of 1965, she says, well, have you heard of Aretha Franklin? Because she asked me if I listened to the other music. And I said, well, a couple other things. And she said, well, you've got to listen to Aretha Franklin. You know, she says, you know, you've got a singer here who's covered one of her songs. And you know, Nina did not like people covering songs. Obviously, we know that. Well, because it was also, for her perspective, a racial concern, because it was usually the white pop artists who were covering the original recordings by the black artists in America. She had great resentment about that because what happened with Donna be misunderstood. And she said, you got this white, I think she might say white, but she said, there's a singer here copying Aretha Franklin note for note. Well, it was, she was Dusty Springfield. Well, what it was, Dusty Springfield had done one song, only one of Aretha's recordings, one. But I guess they were on the same record label, Dusty and Nina. So she heard it, and she told me you've got to listen to Aretha Franklin. You go listen to her, whatever.
Yeah, but you know, I guess you can understand and be empathic about the frustration of this happening over and over and over again. Because here we are, just in one conversation, we've mentioned 3 people who've had their songs covered by somebody else that became a bigger hit than the original.
Yeah,
whether it be Aretha with Dusty, Cilla Black with Dion. And
Animals, Eric Burden with
Animals with Nina Simone.
Nina. Yeah.
You know, and they are just to name but a few.
Many more. There were many more. So so that was about it. Now, how I heard Aretha Franklin is a different story, because that was June. I think it was in like I have photographs from this too. I don't know how I had these photographs. But I went to a Dionne Warwick and Cheryl's fan club. They had a fan club, not Appreciation Society.
Okay.
Outing, like an outing for the fan club members. Dionne wasn't there. In Littlehampton. Littlehampton, the fan club secretary, Gloria, she put it all together. So someone had a portable record player, right? And other than that, running on batteries. And my favorite song, of course, of all time was Walk On By. And suddenly I hear this Walk On By version, but it's not Dionne. I'm like, oh, what is this? And it turned out to be Walk On By on an Aretha Franklin LP called Running Out of Fools. And I didn't know she, of course, the first time I see a picture of her, and I on the LP cover, and people mispronounce her name in England, or the people, some of the fans did, in the fan club gallery, they thought her name was Aretha. Because we didn't have any Arethas in England. So they
put the emphasis on the different syllables.
Oh, that's Aretha Franklin. Okay. Yeah. Well, then I saw, and then I said, oh, that's who Nina was telling me about. Wow. Right. So this literally happens in succession. So what I tell people, Barry, is that when you ask me about my foundation in music, soul music, and my love of it, it is my Dionne, Nina, N, Aretha, A. Because after I heard Aretha, I then found a way to write a letter to her, care of her father's church, and then another letter to her, care of her husband manager, and she sent me a letter back.
I need to know about your start with blues and soul.
All right. Well,
how did that come about?
Well, that isn't so difficult to explain, because by that time,
because again, Blues and Soul was a magazine in the UK that we just used to look forward to. That Absolutely. And I have to say, Black Echoes, those 2 magazines totally. Were the everything.
They were, and to be honest with you, I mean, I have a copy of Blues. Do you want me to show you a Blues and Soul?
Oh, please do.
Hold on there. Let me find a Blues and Soul. Any Blues and Soul.
Entertain yourselves, people.
Oh well.
Sing a song.
Here's a Blues and Soul.
Do a dance.
Who's on the cover?
I'll be back in a second.
Hold on now. I'll find you a good one. Oh well, try to find one that's got something I wrote in it, which was many of them.
You can't see my feet moving.
All right, let's find this. Here's one. Here's a good one. All right. I don't know what I wrote in this one, but
Is he back yet? No.
here you go. A Blues and Soul. This is with Marvin Gaye on the cover. It's got articles on Curtis Mayfield, a lady called Doris Duke. Who's this now on the bottom here? Funkadelic. And that was from 1974. That's a later one. But I
Right.
began writing for Blues and Soul. How that came about was I'd started a record shop in Deptford with Dave Godin, who was the founder of the Tamla Motown Appreciation Society. He was like the kind of the godfather of R&B in Britain, in a sense. He very much was a big supporter and someone who was very dedicated to people finding out about Motown, about the music that really he loved too. So he obviously he loved it. And then so it was me, Dave, and a friend of his called Robert, and we started a little record shop in Deptford, Southeast London. We started out in Deptford, and then it was called Soul City. The record shop was called Soul City. And then in 1967, we moved to Monmouth Street in the West End. And during that time period is when John Abbey, who was a really a hardcore R&B blues fan, has started a magazine called Home of the Blues. And then he changed the name of it to Blues and Soul. And he used to work with us on Saturday mornings to help sell his magazine, but also to help us out because I'm a busy Saturdays. And the first article I wrote for Blues and Soul was in I think it was the first issue of Blues and Soul as a Blues and Soul magazine. But Dave Godin didn't want me to write under my name. I think he had a little bit of issues with John Abbey. So I had to write under a pseudonym. The only time I ever used a pseudonym. So the first Blues and Soul articles that I wrote has my name. I made up a name called Simon Fraser. I don't know where it came from. Made it up.
Okay.
But after that, we got over the Simon, all that. And so when I began to write for Blues and Soul on a regular basis, I think really was when Soul City stopped functioning. And I went to John Abbey and I said, can you give me work or whatever? He said, yes, I can have you work for our mail. We're building a mail order service. Hello. Hello.
Hello. I'm here. Don't worry about that. We let that out.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So what the catalyst for me really writing for Blues and Soul ongoingly was that Aretha came to England in 1970, August of 1970, to do a concert. And by then I'd already met her when she came here in 1968. And she invited me to come to see her at Top of the Pops. And she
Right.
was doing the interviews at the time. So I didn't know that. But I went to see her at Top of the Pops and chatted with her what she'd been up to. And she said, well, she's had another son. Yeah, baby was about 4 or 5 months old. And just told me what she was doing with recording. And just really lovely, really lovely. And I didn't write anything down. I was talking to her. And then I called John. I said, John, has Aretha done any interviews while she's been here? He said, no, he's not doing any press. So I said, oh dear. I said, well, I talked to her in a dressing room. About what she did. He said, well, could you turn it into an article? It's not an official interview. But I said, yeah, I can. And that, Barry, became my very first cover story for Blues and Soul in August of 1970. And I do still have that, but it took me a
Now,
bit
you
to
see,
find it.
this is why these stories are interesting because
Yeah.
you see where the person gets to and who they become, and you
Yeah.
think it's this miraculous, amazing thing. And it's just the journey. And I always say
Yeah.
that I think a lot of life is preordained. What is supposed to come to you comes to you.
That's right. I agree 100%. And I think the thing about that, that's true. And I also think that at the same time, we have choices. So yes, there's something called destiny or
Yeah.
fortune or preordained. Yes, I get that. And I think at different times, we have choices of how we're going to fulfill that could take us over here or over there. And we do have choice in that. And I think that sometimes we make choices that get us to where we're going faster than others. other ways. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, you have a choice of doing certain things one way or another, and suddenly we choose, and it gets us where we're going faster, though we don't always know where we're going. I didn't know. I had no. Let me tell you, Barry. I had no clue when I first bought Walk On By that,
It would lead to
I would
that.
end up doing all this other, all the things that have happened. How could I have known that? I wouldn't have known it. And so in
So you
essence,
did blues and soul because
yes,
you said it started off as blues,
it started as Home of the Blues,
home of the blues, and
and
then
then
it
it
became
became
blues and
Blues and
soul.
Soul in 1967.
Right.
I think the article I'm talking about I wrote in 1967 was for the first issue, I think, of Blues and Soul. We'd have to check the fact of that. But yes, so there's Simon Fraser. And then by 1970, I was done to, that's when I got that first cover story. And then I started working for Contempo, which was a bigger company of Blues and Soul. And that's when I started to write on a regular basis. Yeah.
Right. So what led to you going to the States? Is it because most of the artists you were dealing with were from the States?
Well,
Is that what
logically,
caused you to relocate?
yeah, logically, but that's not exactly what happened. I mean, I was working at Contempo in London. The office had a record shop in the office. Many people who started their careers in music in Britain used to come up there to buy a Jazzy B as a teenager, used to buy records from Contempo, your Junior, Giscombe, people who now are part of the world we're in,
Yeah.
as artists of their own, in their own way. So that was a record shop in London that was part of the Office of Blues and Soul. And it's all part of the same building. And I had a flatmate in London called Gary, and Gary said, I'm going to America um, to visit my aunt or somebody, I think it was his aunt, in Brooklyn in June of 1974. I didn't plan to go to live in America at all. I hadn't thought of it. He said, so what, and I didn't know anyone I could stay with. So when he went there in June, he was supposed to come back, and he didn't. He decided he wanted to stay there. And I don't know how he was able to do that back then. Well, it's easier to do it back then than it subsequently
Yeah.
became. Anyway, so he stayed with his aunt, and then he wrote me one of those little those letters that you saw, aerogram letters, as a blue letter. You fold it all up. I said,
Airmail
"Oh,
letters.
yeah."
Yeah. They used to fold it, the blue one,
That's
and
right.
then
That's
stick
right.
it around the
And
outside.
that's right.
Yeah.
And we couldn't call people because it's too expensive. So he called me and said, "You want to come? If you want to come, stay for a couple of weeks, or stay for a few days, a week or two, whatever, in 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 Brooklyn. You want to take a holiday, come here?" So, okay, good. And so I did. And it turned out to be, that was October 1974. And I was there for probably about 10 days, I think. And it was momentous. I mean, I wasn't supposed to do any work there. I was there just to be in New York. I know it's amazing. First, I hated the first week, but the second week, I really started to get into it. And because Blues and Soul had a photographer in New York, I was able to find out about shows that were going on. So I saw the first one, big show I saw was Aretha Franklin and Blue Magic at Radio City Music Hall. And that's when I
The
knew.
first was Aretha
I
Franklin
mean, come
and
on
Blue
now,
Magic Orchestra. For the
yeah,
love of you. Yeah, come on.
yeah. And then I did an interview with LaBelle, the group LaBelle, Patti LaBelle, Nona Hendricks, Sarah Dash. And that was because of Vicky Wickham, who was a manager of LaBelle, and I knew her from England. And then LaBelle interviewed, and Ashford and Simpson were my other interview they never came to England at that point. And the idea of interviewing Ashford and Simpson in their home, look, I'm a kid, I'm in my mid-20s. I'm like, oh my God, I
So
can't
this
believe
is
this.
just on your trip to go and
Was it
stay
my
with your
holiday?
friends.
My holiday. And the third one
How
was,
did you make all of that happen? Well, I kind of understand, but
yeah.
just briefly explain it, how you made it happen.
Well, I mean, so when I got to New York, John Abbey said to me, "Well, while you're there on a holiday, if you could get a chance to do a couple of interviews for the magazine, because I was already writing for the magazine." I said, "Well, all right." And then the photographer in New York that they had at the time was a guy called Kwame Brathwaite, and I told him that they had a little office there in New York, and he said, "Well," I said, "Can you help me do some of these, find out how I contact people to do the interviews. And of course, he was there, he lived there, he was a New Yorker. So of course he set it up for me to do the interviews through different people.
Yeah.
With Ashford Simpson, LaBelle I did myself, and then Millie Jackson. So Millie Jackson, actually, the only one he really set up was Ashford Simpson, because John Abbey told me to call Millie Jackson. He gave me a number. He said, just call her up and say you're calling on my behalf. So I called Millie Jackson. I said, hello. I'm very English. Hello. Yes. I said, hello, may I speak to Miss Jackson? Yes. Who's this? I said, well, my name's David Nathan, and I'm calling you on behalf of John Abbey in London. Yes. So John asked me if I could do an interview with you while I'm here on holiday. Well, all right then. Yeah, I don't know how. I can't recreate Millie Jackson's voice, but you get the idea. I'm like, okay. She said, now you get on the subway. You get a bit. Let's do it on this blah blah date. And I know where I was. I go, no. I mean, I'd go on the subway. I didn't know. How do I? Really. So I got on the subway, went the wrong way, and I called her from the phone booth. I said, Miss Jackson, I think I've taken the wrong train. What? She cussed a little bit because Millie Jackson cussed. And then she don't go back the other way. I went back the other way, came out of the subway. Of course, I was in the neighborhood. Everyone looked at me. If I hadn't had the hair, maybe that was a good thing, because they looked at me like, hello, are you lost? And I did my first interview with Millie Jackson there. And it was so here's what it was, Barry. After I did those interviews and saw some other shows in that whole 10-day period,
you realize how much you actually got done in 10
man,
days in comparison to trying to make it work from here.
Yeah, and also, to be honest with you, I was at a point in my social life, personal life, well, I just need to do something different. I had the same old friends. We go to the same old places to use the lyrics from a song, and you kind of you can get bored with your same social circle after a while, and that was part of it too. I wanted to do something.
So that was just the holiday. That wasn't actually the relocation yet.
No.
So you had to come back to the UK.
I came back. And I went to see John. Of course, I was still working at Contempo, and he was thrilled. I did the interviews. I said, well, I'm going to go back to America and write. I'm going to go back to America and write. He said, okay. He said, but I can't afford to have you write for Blues and Soul there because I don't have that kind of budget. And the truth was, he liked going to New York himself, so he really didn't want me to go be living there because that would take away love. That's true. That is a true story, and he would even tell you that. So I go to his. So I bought a ticket. I bought a round trip ticket. I thought, well, when I get to New York, if I can't write for Blues and Soul, I'll talk to Vicky and maybe something give me a connection to do some work. I didn't know. And I thought, well, if I have a round trip ticket, you had to have that anyway. If nothing happens, I'll just go home. So here's what did happen.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing, because a lot of opportunities, as you say, come. They're choices that you make, but a lot of them are out of bravery.
Well, it was. It really was. It really was.
It's
100%, Barry. So when I came back to London, and as I say, so 3 weeks before I was getting ready to leave, I told John I was leaving, and he called me to his office. She said, have you bought your ticket already? I said, yes. She said, you really are going to leave, aren't you? I said, yeah. He said, well, I really could use you. I said, I know, but this is what I want to do. So he said, well, I'll tell you what. I'll put you on a 3-month trial basis. If you do enough work for writing for Blues and Soul in New York, in that 3 months, we can look at it again. He said, and I will pay you, not up front, but I'll pay you for doing the work in New York. And that's what happened. So, and even to this day, Barry, I mean, there are some people in your life just have to be so grateful that they just said yes.
Yes. But you only get them to say yes if you knock on the doors.
That's
where the courage comes. Yeah. And you've got to be prepared to accept rejection, because you might not get the response you would like.
Yeah.
But still, if you attempt, It's the courage and bravery to attempt, and
That's
out of
right.
that attempt, anything can happen because you've got nothing to lose from
Exactly.
attempting.
Exactly. And I kind of knew, in a sense, I knew that, but I also, I had no idea about to live in America. I just knew what it would like to write. I was going to do that. And I remember when I'd been there for about a month, John came to visit, to do some other things, and he said to me, "Well, I don't think this is going to really work." He said, "I'm fine. We keep going with you, but I'll tell you, for the, like I said, 3 months." He said, "But I don't know, David. I think you," he said, "I think you're too timid to be able to survive in New York." And when you throw down a gauntlet, you say, "Well, I don't think you're going to make it here," like that. Something in me
That's
said, "Okay, okay, we shall see."
exactly, that's
And
the
I was like, "All
incentive
right
to
now."
prove them wrong.
Oh yes, yeah. And my friend Gary was still there. He was my primary friend from here. So we used to hang out together. And eventually, within a few months, I got I got a flat in the same building where the Blues and Soul office was, which again, John paid for that because it was really the Blues and Soul office at that point, as well as where I lived. And that was really how it began.
Now, where is the Billboard
Okay.
connection?
Well, that comes much later, because between 1975 and 1980, about 1983, no, in 1984, I moved to LA in 1984. And that was, I come back here. My mother passed away at the end of 1984. And I'd spent some time in LA before that, but not a long time. So, and I was still writing for Blues and Soul then. And then off and on, not as much. No, actually, it was a break when I wasn't writing for Blues and Soul. Let me get my chronology correct. So anyway, Billboard comes into it because when I lived in Los Angeles from 84, actually lived in Los Angeles from 1984 to 2008. So that's 34 years. And of course, I was very familiar with Billboard. I mean, anyone in the music industry would be familiar with it. And what happened was, one of the people who I'd known in New York as a on the ground reporter, who's now a very famous author, filmmaker, and distinguished person in the world of the media, Nelson George, was the R&B editor at Billboard at the time. I'd known him in New York, and then I just, run into him at different things. And I said to him, I think I spoke to him on the phone. I said, I'm going to be I've got an assignment to go to Detroit to cover Aretha Franklin making this gospel album she made called One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism. And I said,
I can hear you.
you can hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, good.
Keep.
I just can't see you, but I can hear you. Yeah. Anyway, so she said, tell me. So he said, I said, can I do a little story for Billboard about it? That was just asked him. It's all right. So off I trot. I do my little story. It was a very short story, I think. I didn't do a lot of coverage of it, just about Aretha doing gospel album, blah, 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 for Billboard. And then that was 1987. And then I think Nelson continued to be the R&B editor for a little longer, and I would do occasional pitches to him about doing things. And then the person who succeeded him was Janine. Then she was married to Janine McAdams, and she became the R&B editor. They were both based in New York, and I was in LA, but didn't mean we couldn't communicate. And so Janine was a person who really got me doing more regular features for Billboard.
Right.
And
And this is the association between you and Janine, and
that's right.
consequently the friendship that you developed.
Absolutely. And we didn't start as friends, we just started as colleagues. I mean,
Well, yeah,
I
but
don't
the
know,
friendship developed over years.
developed it. And at that time, I said she was based in New York. I was in Los Angeles. And at some point, she moved to LA. Can't remember what year it was, but she did. And then, of course, we get to know each other. She was one of my neighbors in Los Angeles, who lived around the corner from me. So I helped her get acclimatized to being in Los Angeles, the city of angels full of devils.
Indeed.
That's what I call it. And that was great
And
because then
many others call it the same, to be
well,
honest.
I'm sure they do, because it is also the the home of Hollywood, which is all about fantasy, as we know. And the problem is sometimes in LA people forget that there is something called fantasy and it's not the same as reality. So they sometimes,
Some learn
you know
that
what
the
I
hard
mean?
way,
Like could be
unfortunately.
yes, yes. So I wrote. That's when I started writing for Billboard much more frequently. I was still doing some things for blues and soul, but it wasn't as consistent. Although I can't say I'm going to do it at all, but so at that point I was doing Billboard, some blues and soul, and then I was also writing for a trade magazine in Los Angeles, well, based in Los Angeles, called Black Radio Exclusive, BRE.
All right.
And at that point, but I would that's the point I was really building a reputation as someone who covered R&B soul music consistently. And as I've thanked Janine, you know, she really was, by giving me so many Billboard opportunities, she really helped me to establish my reputation in the music industry because everyone read Billboard.
Yeah. Well,
So
it
that was
is
like
the
a mark of
reputable
approval.
magazine. It is the reputable
Yes, yes,
music
that's
industry
right.
magazine.
Mm.
And being her giving you the opportunity to write regularly for them is
Absolutely.
instrumental
It really
in,
was. It really was.
in the reputation now being called His Excellency, the British.
Okay. By the way, do you know who gave me that title? We don't know.
I've no idea, but you're about to tell me,
I
though.
am about to tell you, aren't I? I let me see what year it was. 1993. I got my first award in the music industry from an organization called the International Association of African American Music, and the award I got, should say, sorry, it was um, it was the first award they gave to a journalist, music journalist. So I was
All
very
right.
proud of it. And to mark the occasion, one of my colleagues, Scott Galloway, who's still a very distinguished writer, does a lot of great work, you know, liner notes, written many, many things. He used to write for a magazine called Urban Network, just a very great guy and a friend of mine. And he said, we were doing it. He said, well, let's do an article for Blues and Soul, for Blues and Soul, actually, an article on celebrating my getting the award and all my 15 years. And I don't know what why it was 15 years, whatever it was, 15 years. Must have been some 1993 minus 15, whatever.
Milestone, yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, he he first interviewed me. And then he got quotes from all these different other artists about me, which was lovely. I still have it somewhere. And while we were talking, he asked me about what my original thing I wanted to do before I became involved in music. I said, well, my original career path that I really wanted to pursue was to be a diplomat. I wanted to join the Foreign Service.
His Excellency. You see, it
Yeah,
came
no,
in.
no kidding. I had a different hobby when I was growing up. This is all in London, when I was like 15, 16 years old, before I really got so deeply into music. I used to go to the embassies in London on Saturday mornings, and during some holidays, and collect all the names of all the ambassadors in the world. And I even got featured in the Kilburn Times and on the BBC. I told you I was strange, didn't I? I told you my parents were like, who is this child? Who is it? Really?
Here's me frying fish and he wants to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they were incredibly proud of me. I know they were. And at the same time, no one else was going to embassies, collecting
Yeah,
names.
but you know what? The thing is, the things that people think are strange or make you an oddball are the things that make you stand out.
That's
And
right.
again, it is you having the courage to do it.
Yeah, and I just was fascinated with the world, Barry.
Yeah.
I was so interested in the world, really. That's
You
why I wanted to be a
sound like a
diplomat.
Salvador Dali. Not
See what I
only
am?
did he do paintings, he did sculpture, he did
That's right.
aviation, he did engineering,
That's right.
and really put paid to this phrase, jack of all trades,
Oh no.
master of none, because he was the master of everything he
That's right.
touched.
Well, I wouldn't claim that, but I will say this. I will say that. So at some point, I realized after doing all the ambassador stuff, and I said, well, you know what? Then what actually happened was music, as I shared before, came into my life in a big, big way. And then I thought, well, I don't know if I could be a good diplomat. I also realized that to be a diplomat at that point, I'd have to join the British Foreign Service. To join the British Foreign Service, you had to go to either Oxford or Cambridge. There were very high bars. Most people
Right.
from the kind of background I did were not going to likely become diplomats, because the Foreign Service at that time was very much about who you knew and your families and blah, 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 blah. So that didn't happen. Maybe I could have, but my temperament, I now realize, would not have done well for being a diplomat. But so Scott says to me, what did you want to do before you got into music? And I said, I wanted to be an ambassador. And then we were talking. He said, "Oh, so in a way, you've kind of done that because you're British, and you're an ambassador. You're an ambassador to soul music." I said, "Yeah, because look, you've got a Queen of Soul, Aretha. You've got Godfather of Soul, was not really in the court, but still James Brown. You've got Prince. You've got all these different people who you could say form the royal court of soul." I said, well, you've got to have a British ambassador then, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's how it came about.
Well, yes, and you've interviewed them all. You had a great relationship with Aretha. You
Yes.
became good friends,
Yes.
and you know David Nathan is known as the one who can pick up the phone and speak to any of them at any point. Up to the point of last week, Ann Nesby
Oh, wow.
here,
Man.
and
Wow.
with doing her solo show,
Yes.
and her daughter was with her.
That's right.
And
That's
again,
right.
I find that our paths have crossed because her daughter is in a group called Daughters of Legacy.
Yeah, I only found that out when I was talking to her. I didn't know about that.
And it is with Keisha Jackson, Millie
Yeah.
Jackson's daughter,
Yeah.
Betty Wright's daughter,
Yeah.
Edward, Dennis Edwards' daughter.
Yes.
And I think that's
There's
it.
a
And her.
son somewhere in there. I don't know who it is.
Um,
Is it all
and
female?
they're all female, Daughters of Legacy.
Oh,
Yeah.
then okay, okay.
And I was fortunate enough to interview them last year
Really?
with their first single.
Wow.
So when I saw that you were over and she was over with her mother and you were there with her, I was like, oh, super paths have crossed yet again.
Yes, yes. Well, I have to tell you, my connection with Anne and the Sounds of Blackness, and then her daughter Jamesia, really began when the first Sounds of Blackness album came out, through Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, because at that point I had taken on doing another part of work in the world of soul music, you could say, or R&B and soul music, which was to be a media coach, because I realized that some of the artists I was interviewing at that time had no training. Not a bad thing, but they'd never been trained how to deal with the press. And
Yes, well, it can be a bad thing. It
Mhm.
can be a bad thing
Yeah,
because if you can't express yourself in a way to the media that can't be twisted, that can't be
right.
misconstrued,
Hmm.
it can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
And on interviewing your friend Janine and uh, Lynn,
Yes, yes.
the women behind the mic, they
Hmm.
speak on that subject of
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
number of artists that we see, and they had no clue how
Yeah.
to conduct themselves, even to protect themselves
That's right.
in an
That's right.
interview.
That's right. So what happened was I did the media coaching was really based on my frustration with interviewing people and for Billboard or for Blues or whatever I was interviewing people for, and then not giving me full answers. And I had to try to get people to speak more about what they were doing, and it was hard at that point. So I thought, well, I remember that Motown in their earliest years used to have a whole training program, which is for to teach artists how to do interviews. They had other parts of it which I didn't do.
For like deportment
Yeah,
and
I didn't do
stuff.
any of that. But I certainly did take from that example that maybe I could develop some kind of program to coach artists and deal with the media. So a couple of early clients, and then Jimmy Jam and Terry was this label called Perspective, and I knew Jimmy and Terry as producers from LA, and I'd written when they were in LA, and I'd written, well, they weren't in LA, but they obviously did some sessions there and stuff. But I'd done a few stories on Jimmy and Terry for Blues and Soul, for Billboard, so they knew me. And so they told the person who was in charge of Perspective in LA that I'd start this media coaching service. And they said, well, I will fly you out to Minneapolis and you can coach all the new artists we have just signed, which was Sounds of Blackness, or Gary Hines, not the whole group, but Gary Hines, I think maybe a couple of other people in the group, and Ann Nesby separately, because they knew she was probably going to do some solo work, and she was a lead singer. So she was going to be speaking to the media. Mint Condition, the group Mint Condition, and Low Key. So those are 4 artists I coached in Minneapolis over about a week time period. And so that's how I met Ann and Sounds of Blackness. And when that record came out, I got to tell you, change that I never forgot that first album. Wow. I mean, come on. That was A&M, like they spent, I have to give A&M credit, record company credit for really putting money behind launching the Sounds of Blackness
Oh
in
yeah.
a big way.
Big.
And you know, I just
It
loved, I
was
mean,
phenomenal to
it,
see them
man, it
live.
was
It was an
just,
absolutely phenomenal
and
experience to see them
yeah,
live.
totally. And what happened was I got to hang out with Gary and Ann and everybody. And well, this is when the album came out, and I'd done the media coach, blah blah blah, in Minneapolis. But when they were doing some promotion on that album on one Sunday in LA. Well, they're there for a week, but that Sunday they said, let's go to the churches. And said, you want to come with us? So I got on the bus with them, the coach, and I went to all the churches, and they would sing a couple of songs. And then Gary says, well, you might as well become an honorary member of the Sounds of Blackness then. I said, oh, well, all right, whatever. I don't know how
Yeah.
that worked, but he was, of course, joking. Yeah, anyway, but I got to really hang out with them and spend time with them. And then when A&M and Jimmy and Terry and the person who was in charge of A&M in London, in New York, put a plan together for them to come to Britain, to launch them in Britain. And I don't know if I came with them, but I made sure I was here when they were there. And I will never, ever forget when they did the first show of the Hammersmith
Yep.
Odeon.
Odeon.
And I mean, people were just not, oh, I say they weren't ready. I mean, they're like, oh, wow.
Well, to be honest, we weren't ready. We weren't expecting that because even though you'd bought the record and by then you were in love with the Sounds of Blackness,
That's right.
you
Optimistic.
saw the image on the back of the cover,
Yeah.
but you had no idea of the enormity of seeing that number of people coming on the stage. And I remember saying it to Gary Hines, saying, I couldn't believe it was as if they were never going to stop. All these people in black suits
Yes.
coming out in a line, and you think, but there's just more and more. How many more are there?
An
This line is
infinite
not
number.
stopping. But what a wonderful individual Gary Hines is as well.
Yes, yes,
Lovely person.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And then, of course, I stayed in touch with Anne when she began her solo career. But the other thing, I just got one quick story to tell you about when they came to London, and I was here, as I said. So I was on the bus with them, going to different radio stations. I didn't go. Well, I'd come with them, but I didn't go on the air or anything. So we were on the bus, and it was so hilarious to see them off camera, so to speak. They were so funny, Barry. They had me in stitches. They were just clowning around, and Anne remembers, as I do too, that her sister, what's her sister's name now? Oh wow, Marie, one of the group. I better be Marie, I think it's her sister. But anyway, she got into a little bit a dispute, a friendly dispute, while the other singers, and they got into a little not they didn't fight, but they were arguing with each other. And I'm not sure if they were doing it for my benefit. And at some point, I think one of them snatched the other's one's wig off in the bar. And I got to tell you, man, that memory and when it was, she remember when did we,
Shut up.
I think they did that. I think they did that for my benefit. I really do. It
Oh,
was
that's
hilarious.
hilarious.
Yes. So I've
So when
always
did you
strong.
relocate back? When did you relocate to London? When did you come back to
I
London?
came back in 2009.
Okay.
I spent 10 months prior
That
to that. I was in Los Angeles and then I went to Philadelphia for 10 months. And then I came back here.
What prompted that decision to finally come back?
Well, it was a few things. I mean, I'd seen some history because the year that I came back was the year when Barack Obama became the president of America. And that in itself was massively historic, as you know.
Of
And
course.
then I just felt that I had done such a lot in America, and I felt like I didn't really see what the next thing for me to do was. And I also didn't really enjoy living in Philadelphia, to be honest with you. And the other thing that really was there is, at that point I was senior, and I wanted to make sure that any health concerns I would have could be addressed in Britain rather than in America, because if you have health issues in America and you haven't got proper coverage, you could be bankrupt from one hospital stay. And that's really true. I'm not making it up. And so I thought, well, I just thought it was kind of a funny. I just felt like it was time to come back here. I had a conversation with my sister. I have a younger sister, one sister, and I felt like it was like, maybe it's time to reevaluate. And Philadelphia was not a good experience for me, so that's really what it was. I came back and stayed with my sister. I stayed with my sister. Then I stayed with my cousin. I stayed for a little while with Ralph T, famous Ralph T, of Expansion Records, and good friend of mine. And then I got my own little flat share. I have a series of flat shares. They're all full of high drama. One thing I did discover about being in Britain, see, all that time before that, when I lived in LA, I had my own flat. Didn't have any flatmates. Well, the first 4 years I did. The other part, I lived by myself. I had my flat, and I loved having my own flat in Los Angeles. I rented it. But anyway, but coming back here, I had flatmates, and that's a whole. If I told you everything that happened when I was having flatmates in that time period,
Well, no, let
it's
me
the
say
best.
this.
Let me say this, Barry. It would be the best Netflix or Amazon Prime series that I've ever seen. It was unedited. The exact what happened. Oh my God! Drugs,
Yes,
sex,
but what I was
prostitution, everything.
is flat sharing is one thing when you're in your 20s.
Oh.
Okay. But as you said yourself, in your own mouth, you're a senior. Okay.
Yes.
So flat sharing as a senior is intolerable.
Man, you could.
Period. Full
I
stop.
tell you,
It's not
no
even an
lie.
option.
Yeah, I tell you,
I can't even imagine the trauma.
oh well, it wasn't so much trauma as drama, and it was drama.
Drama
It was
is
high
trauma,
drama.
especially at this time of life. Drama is trauma.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess you could say, but I just, again, I say one day that'll be I have to start writing this stuff down to become a wonderful presented to Netflix or Amazon Prime as a fantastic the journey of a British ambassador's soul. This is part 12. He high
Season 10.
drama, flat sharing in London, drugs, sex, prostitution, all of it.
Oh my God.
I wasn't the
Lucky you,
prostitute.
I say. Lucky you.
Well, I don't know about that now. There's sometimes police come over. Oh Lord. And you know what's so funny, Barry? Where I live now is about a 8-minute walk from the last place I had a flat share in London, in
Okay.
Stockport. So I know where it
You
is.
finally found peace where you are now.
Oh yes, yes, yes. And I have to
That's the important thing.
yeah. And here's the thing. You asked me about coming back here. I didn't know what life would be like here when I came back, and it was some challenging to begin with because people didn't really know me and didn't know what I'd done in America. They just knew my name, but didn't know what I looked like or anything what I'd done. They knew me, but they didn't really know me. So, um, what I did was I began to work primarily in an area that I love, which is to do reissue work. Box sets that I've been doing for Soul Music Records label, which I created as my label, and then did it through Cherry Red Records, who've been great. And then I've done some other things. I still do always do work for people in America, because of the fact that we have modern technology allows you to work wherever you are. So
Yeah.
I still do work for companies in America. And I have the reissues here. And it's been an adjustment to different life here. And I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah. So
Thank
that's what David Nathan, His Excellency, British Ambassador of Soul Music, is doing for the industry to this day. You're doing reissues.
I am. I'm not doing as much because I did this year. We've done so many. We've done like I've had reissues every month this year. I mean, well, I just done in March and going all the way to November. We've had reissues on Nina Simone, Smokey Robinson and Miracles, the Spinners, Lolita Holloway. We got one.
So really the purpose of you reissues
Yes.
is you can't get the originals anymore.
Well, what it is because by virtue of doing them as box sets, which are a little more expensive, we get to put all the recordings of a particular artist in one place on CD with proper
Right.
liner notes, and they're really well packaged. And for fans of those artists, they can't get them in that way anywhere else. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
them is still available to stream, but really the long-term hardcore music lovers of this particular kind of music, they want to be able to have the CD. They want to be able to read the notes, and so that's really the work I've been doing that work. Not just began doing it with Cherry Red here. Well, actually, that's not true. I did it with Expansion and then Cherry Red,
Right.
but I was doing it in America as well. So this is just for my own label, and I've just loved being able to make this music available to people again.
Well, it's great that you say it yourself as a senior, you're still involved in the industry, you're still involved in
Yes,
an industry that you love
yes.
and contributing positively.
Well, yeah, yes, because as I remember when I saw Anne Nesby on stage last Thursday, it's all about being optimistic. You know,
I love
it
that.
really is. Keep your head to the sky. Yes, that's it. And that's it for me. And I tell people that it's where we started this conversation about me creating the Soul Train line at Reunited. It's really about living it. I don't, I would say that if I stopped living the music or relating to the music as a source of
Yeah,
energy and emotion and all of that, when it's no longer that for me, then I should stop being involved with it.
yeah. Well, that's a beautiful close to a wonderful story, a wonderful hour spent with this amazing ambassador. Thank you
Okay.
for taking the time out to tell the David Nathan story.
Well, thank you so much, Barry. And I really want to thank you for inviting me to be on this show and to be part of your esteemed catalog of podcasts, which I'm aware of.
Yes,
And
there
really
are a few
thank you.
names there.
Huh?
There are a few good names there.
Yes, yes. Um, so thank you. And it's just really, um, I love being able to share with people the stories about my life, more as an example for what can if you just keep with what you believe in, what you love. And I know you are also a very great example of that. And it's interesting that I've been here all these years and our paths have only just crossed
Only just crossed, yeah.
recently at the Kid Creole and the
Indeed,
Coconuts.
indeed, yeah.
So thank you so much for this. And I think that there are unsung heroes in Britain who have done so much to keep the music going. And I'm clear that I'm now speaking to one of them.
Oh, me, no, 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 no. I'm not there yet. I'm not there
Well,
yet.
keep going, keep going.
We're definitely there. And but
Yes.
you are a song hero because you've got your title. So
Well, that's true.
song
Now
hero.
we now we have to figure out how to get the title to equate to the bank account.
Oh, we don't do it for that. We
No,
don't
we don't.
we
We
don't do
don't.
it for
That's
that.
true. That's
No.
true. It's not
No.
so much a bank account, but one of the things that I do find sometimes challenging, Barry, is that I have to keep for people in Britain because they don't know me as much as the people in America do, and the fact I wasn't here for 34 years is part of the reason. So it's just to let people in the media and people in the industry know that I have a lot to contribute in terms of stories and what I've done. And that yeah, and that's it. So I'm still on a
And
mission.
not only what you've already done, it's what you still can contribute.
Yes, yes, yes,
Because,
exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, fantastic.
it's what you can still contribute to the industry.
Yes,
So
yes,
thank you for that. And a wonderful close to an amazing interview. Be optimistic. What else can I say?
yes,
David
absolutely.
Nathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And appreciated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Barry.